Okay, it's gone live. Okay, today is March 8th. This is the preliminary hearing calendar for misdemeanors. My name is Brad Gardner. I'm going to be presiding over this hearing today. I'm going to call a calendar. And when you hear your case call, please make the appropriate announcement and we can move forward. Position number one, I have Deborah Davenport.
Yes, Your Honor, I'm representing Ms. Davenport. That's going to be a hearing this morning, but I would like to have a pretrial with both the court and the state before we get started on that one. If we could do that in chambers, I have some medical information about Ms. Davenport that I would like to let everybody know about, but don't really want to do that online.
Okay, I'll set up the breakout room and I'll put myself, Ms. Hernandez, and you in the breakout room to hear your announcement. Position number two, Bradley Gaston.
And that's mine as well, and that will be a hearing.
Okay. Position number four is Jamal McLean.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. I was just going to let you know I attempted to make contact with Mr. McLean. I wasn't able to. We're not currently appointed to him, but if the court would like, I'll take the opportunity this morning to meet with him briefly to determine whether or not we need to have a hearing if the court wants to appoint us.
Okay. I'll give you the opportunity to meet with him. And if appointment is something that is available as an option, then I will do that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Position number five, Michael Scott.
Your Honor, I've had a chance to meet with Mr. Scott, and I believe that we are ready to proceed with a hearing this morning.
Okay. That'll be number two. Ms. Gross, your hearing on Mr. Gaston, your announcement on Mr. Gaston, was that going to be a hearing also?
Yes, Gaston is a hearing, Your Honor.
Okay. So, Mr. Moore, you'll be number three.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Position number seven, Darius Weaver.
Your Honor, if I could have a minute with Mr. Weaver, I'm not certain at the moment whether or not that will be a hearing.
Okay. Position eight, Angela Willa.
Your Honor, we were not appointed to Miss Willa. However, I did have an opportunity to meet with her. She did ask for our assistance. She asked the court if you would appoint us. And if you're willing to do that, Your Honor, we would request to move forward with the hearing.
Okay. I will grant the request for appointment. And it'll be for the two individuals that we may have, Mr. Moore. I'm going to make the oral pronouncement and I'll just provide me with paperwork and I'll sign off on it today.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And finally, position number nine, Kendrick Williams.
Your Honor, I did meet with Mr. Williams. We are ready to proceed with the hearing.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody else that completes my calendar? Is there anybody else that believed that a case was going to be called and did not hear it called? Okay.
I don't think so, Your Honor. Those are the cases that we had set out this morning.
Okay. So, Ms. Hernandez, it looks like Mr. Davenport, there's going to be a hearing. Mr. Gasson, there's going to be a hearing. Mr. Moore is going to check with Mr. McLean. Mr. Scott is going to be a hearing. Mr. Moore is going to check with Mr. Weaver. I'm appointing Mr. Moore or Lister and Holt to represent Miss Willa. And Ms. Moore is going to speak with her. And then Mr. Williams is going to be a hearing. So I'm going to set up the breakout rooms. The first thing I'm going to do is meet with Ms. Hernandez and Ms. Gross about Ms. Davenport. And then, oh my goodness. Okay. Something just popped up, said I was signed out of this Zoom hearing because someone else had signed in. I don't know if you all have heard, I went to law school. I didn't go to Georgia Tech. So I'm going to set up the breakout rooms. I'm going to put Mr. Moore in the breakout room with the jail. Let's see. I see an Eric Floyd. Are you an officer, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Which case are you here on?
I'm here on Mr. McLean.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
So you can turn your camera off and you can mute yourself. We're gonna see what Mr. Moore's announcement when he gets to meet with Mr. McLean. But just stay in
Sounds good.
contact with Ms. Hernandez and just, stay handy.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let me create these breakout rooms. All right. Ms. Hernandez, you're going to be assigned to breakout room number 1. I'm going to place you and Ms. Gross in there. And then I'm going to come in to that room.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Hey, Judge.
Yes, sir.
Inmate Gaston, he's no longer in jail. He was transferred to Henry County.
He was transferred to Henry County.
Yes, sir.
Miss Mary, would you check on that? Let's see because if he posted bond and was transferred, that's one thing. If he was just transferred to Henry County, just transfer him. He still has a right to a preliminary hearing. So we need to check into that. Is there anyone else that has any kind of special condition?
From my end, no, sir. That's the only inmate who is not here.
Okay. Okay, well, let's keep that rolling. Miss Mary, would you check into that with position number 2, Bradley Jeronique Gadsden?
I'm checking on it right now.
Okay, so I'm going to place the jail in room 2, Mr. Moore in room 2. And is there anyone else from your office, Mr. Moore or Miss Gross, that I need to place in there?
No, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's see. I've opened up the rooms. Everyone can click on their links, and I'm going to join Miss Gross and Miss Hernandez in room number 1.
Got it. Thank you, Judge.
Officer Floyd, can you give me a look at the chat and give me a call, please?
Gotta get you in that thing.
Okay.
What?
Okay.
Since it's on.
Ms. Coleman, you need to mute your phone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let me place Miss Gross into room number 2. You should be able to go into room number 2 now. Miss Gross. Miss Hernandez, who was the officer on Miss Davenport's case?
It was Miss Officer Crystal Richards.
Okay. I
Yeah.
don't see her there. So it looks like we may have reached a resolution in that. So Officer Richards doesn't have to show.
Right.
Judge, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
He bonded out of jail. Gaston.
Gaston. Okay. All right. So Gaston is going to be transferred to state court by operation law as he's bonded out. All right. Mr. Floyd, we're waiting to hear from Mr. Moore as it relates to Mr. McLean. Let's see.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. I see Investigator Evans. Is he from your office, Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
I believe S. Chase is Officer Stefan Chase on the Williams.
Position 9, yes. All right, so we have Officer Owens. So it looks like we're waiting to hear back from Mr. Moore. Perfect timing.
And he appears. So you're talking about. Yes, Your Honor, I did have a chance to check in with those two. Mr. McLean's actually not in custody anymore.
Okay,
And so the only question we had was about Weaver, and we're ready on him whenever the court is.
okay, so Weaver is going to be a hearing.
Yes, sir.
All right. What about Mr. Scott?
Him as well, Your Honor.
Okay. So we have the officer present for Mr. Scott. And we have the officer present for Mr. McLean, which is Mr. Floyd. So Mr. Floyd or Officer Floyd, Mr. McLean, according to Mr. Moore, has bonded out. So his case is going to be bound over by operation of law, and you are free to go, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So Ms. Hernandez, you're the person that has the burden. So I'm not gonna call the cases. I just generally call the cases in order, but I'll leave it up to you. Are you prepared to go forward right now with Michael Scott? Position 5?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Let's see. That's gonna be Officer Owens.
That is correct.
Okay, Officer Owens, if you can hear me, thank you. Unmute yourself. Okay, I'm gonna call position number 5, State of Georgia versus Michael Dewayne Scott Jr. He's charged in warrant number 2022 WA02115 with committing the offense of criminal trespass. He's also charged in warrant number 2022 WA02116 with committing the offense of disorderly conduct. Mr. Moore is here on behalf of Mr. Scott. At the jail, can we bring Mr. Michael Scott up, please? Can anyone hear me at the jail?
Judge, are you talking to me, sir?
Yes, sir. Can we bring up Mr. Michael Dewayne Scott Jr.?
Yes, sir.
He going to Alpha 3. Okay. All right. Thank you, Don. Sorry. You gotta take him all the way up.
Okay. Okay, and Mr. Scott is charged in warrant number 2022 WA02116 with committing the offense of disorderly conduct. He's been represented here by Mr. Moore from Lister and Holt, and Ms. Hernandez is here on behalf of the state. Ms. Hernandez, you can swear in your witness and you can proceed.
Officer Owens, if you can please raise your right hand so I can swear you in. Do you swear that the evidence that you shall give the court in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Please state your name for the court.
Officer Jalen Owens with the Clayton County Police Department.
And how long have you been employed by the Clayton County Police Department?
Over a year.
And were you on duty on January 23rd, 2022?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall responding to an incident at 3207 Bentley Crossings in Atlanta, Georgia?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Do you recall the reason why you were dispatched to that location?
Yes, ma'am. When I was dispatched to the location, my complainant was Mr. Scott's mother. She advised that her and her son got into a verbal disagreement, and he ended up breaking some belongings in the house.
After he proceeded to break some belongings in the house, what happened after that?
When I got there, I made contact with the complainant. I spoke with her. She advised that he wasn't at the location anymore, and he told her that he will be back at the location once we leave. So she told me he was around there somewhere watching the apartment, waiting on us to leave before he came back.
Did she tell you the reason why he left?
She just said when the argument was over. The argument was basically over. He was upset with her for not helping him out. Apparently his car had ran out of gas or something, and he called her to come help him when she came. He was expecting her to have gas or to have the money to give him, and she told him she didn't have anything, and so he got mad, so she left him at the store. And he came back to the location. He walked back from the Quick Trip, which is on Riverdale Road in Norman. So he walked back to their house from there, and he was mad. And he supposedly unplugged the living room TV because she was watching it. And I guess he wanted her full attention. And then once that argument began, that's when he knocked over the shelf and the glass broke on the shelf.
So did you arrest the defendant?
Mr. Scott, yes, I did.
Okay. And do you see him on the Zoom this morning?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you please identify him by what he's wearing?
Black male wearing a white mask and orange jumpsuit.
And when he returned to the location, did you notice anything about his demeanor?
Well, I was, at that time, I had left because I was dispatched to somewhere else. Because I left waiting to see will he come back within a certain amount of time. And then that's when, as soon as I left, my supervisor came because our complainant called back and told us that he was at the door now. So he made contact with him, and then I started back to the location. When I came back to the location, he and my supervisor, apparently, I guess they were yelling. Our supervisor advised that he was upstairs causing a commotion in a breezeway. Apparently he was yelling while my supervisor was escorting him downstairs. He put his weight down so he couldn't walk. So he didn't want to walk. So we ended up doing a buddy system to pick him up off the ground and continue to escort him to the car. And then once he was in the car, he continued to yell and cuss and things of that nature.
And last question, what was the defendant arrested for?
He was arrested for the criminal trespass against breaking things in the house and the disorderly conduct because he was outside of the residence. He was outside of the residence. It was like past 10 o'clock at night. He was outside yelling, screaming, and to the point where one of the residents came outside and asked her to be quiet. And, apparently he knew that resident. So he continued to scream her name and everything like that after she advised that her kids was in the resident sleep.
No further questions from the state, Your Honor.
Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore, you're muted.
Thanks.
Okay.
Always appreciate it. Good morning, officer.
Good morning.
So when you initially went out there, approximately what time was that? Could you tell me?
Yes, sir. The initial time I went out there was before, it was right around 10 o'clock, actually.
10 p.m.?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I was a little bit unclear. Did you leave and come back? Or how did that
I
work?
did. I left just to see if what she was saying was true. And as soon as I went out the complex, that he would go to the door.
What time did
And
you?
then,
I'm sorry. Continue. I didn't mean to cut you off.
so yeah, I did. And once I did, my supervisor came. Well, basically, I swapped places with another officer because we had a high priority call go out. It was a vehicle fire, and I went to that, and we are already short staffed.
Officer Owens, we lost your video. Okay, thank you.
You?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, Officer Owens, what time did you return? Approximately.
I would say I returned maybe about 10, a little bit before 10:30ish.
Okay. And at that initial arrival, he was not on scene, correct?
No, sir, he was not on scene.
But at 10:30, he was on scene at that time?
Yes, when I returned, he was on scene.
Okay. He's alleged to have damaged the shelf, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Could you describe to me the shelf?
The shelf was, the best way I can describe it is, it was like a metal fixture that held multiple glass shelves, which held multiple stuff like family portraits and other miscellaneous objects. So he knocked it over, and the multiple glass shelves ended up breaking on the ground.
Were you able to observe the broken shelves?
I did, sir.
Did you have body camera operational at that time?
Yeah, the body camera was active.
Okay. Did you take photographs of the damaged materials?
No, sir. When I got there, she was already sweeping the glass up. The majority of it was in a plastic bag next to the broken shelf.
The glass, you mean? Was
Yeah.
Okay.
The glass.
Gotcha. So as far as in relation to where everything else was in the house, was this in the living room, TV room? Could you give me a little better idea?
Okay, all of this was done in the living room. So apparently he unplugged the TV, which is to the right of the shelves, the metal shelf that had the glass shelves on it. So he unplugged that. They started talking. Apparently he didn't like what was being said. He knocked the thing down. That's when she called us. And when I got there, it was on the floor with the glass broken and the TV was plugged back up and stuff like that.
I see. Obviously, you weren't able to observe him breaking the shelves, correct?
No, sir.
His mother described to you that he indeed broke the shelves, but she did not describe to you in what way he broke the shelves. Is that right? In other words, using a hand, a foot, his back, his shoulder.
She just said he knocked all the stuff over.
I see. And she also did not tell you in any way that he purposely did that, correct?
What she told me is he does things like that and gets like that when he's intoxicated.
But she didn't tell you in any way that his actions were on purpose. In other words, she left it open it's perhaps possible that he unintentionally knocked it over, correct?
If you want to say it, yeah, you can.
In other words, by the way that she told you that, you couldn't be sure.
You know, by the way that she told me, the argument happened, and because he was intoxicated, he was in a belligerent state. So he did that as a result of the argument happening and he not liking that she wasn't helping him like he wanted her to.
But she never described to you the way in which he broke it, correct?
All she said was he knocked it over.
So it leaves open the possibility of unintentionally knocking it over, correct?
Yes, correct.
In discussing the disorderly conduct, were you able to observe his statements outside of the apartment?
I didn't. When I came, I got to the last bit of it. So I came after he was supposedly yelling yelling at the neighbors or whatever. He was still yelling when I got there, and he continued to yell and cuss in the backseat of the patrol car. In addition to resisting and not wanting to go in the back of the patrol car.
Gotcha. He's not charged with resisting, though, correct?
No.
As far as, so you were able to observe some yelling on his part,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, sir.
All right. But just not the whole thing. Part of it happened before you got close enough. Is that right?
That's correct.
So I think it's been characterized that he was loud and obnoxious. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
It would be fair to say that he was not making any threats towards anybody, correct?
I wouldn't be able to answer that, honestly. You would have to look in the supplemental report for that, which my supervisor conducted, as he was the one who arrived on scene and made contact first during the second incident.
I understand. But as far as your observations go, what you were able to see and hear, you never heard any threats or anything of that nature. Is that accurate?
No, not from the time that I walked him from there to my police car, no.
Essentially, and he never, the discussion that he was having with you and the other officers was not in any way intended to threaten you. Would that be accurate?
No, he wasn't threatening me, just cussing and everything like that.
Just a lot of cussing and yelling. Would that be fair to say?
Pretty much I'll go with that.
And would you attribute that to him being intoxicated?
Do I think so? Yeah.
Were you ever able to make any observations with regard to intoxication?
I mean, he had the little slurred speech. He was sweating a little bit. And then, he would have moments where he would be calm. And then he instantly start back yelling and cussing. And then he'll calm back down. And then he'll just start up again.
You're not able to detect the odor of any alcohol?
Me, I had a mask on. And I wasn't trying to get close enough to him for that. But.
And you didn't perform any field sobriety exercises or PBTs or anything like that, did you?
No, sir. That was outside of my investigation.
To your knowledge, I'll withdraw. Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Hernandez, do you have any redirect?
Just one question. Officer, you had stated that when you arrived, the defendant was being so loud that a neighbor came out. Is that correct?
That's correct.
No further questions.
Okay. Do you have any other witnesses?
No.
Ms. Hernandez, may Officer Owens be excused?
Yes, I believe this is his only case, so he may be excused.
Okay. Mr. Moore, do you have any evidence?
I do not, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you have any argument?
From defense, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Hernandez, you get to open and close.
I'll just close, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Your Honor. With regard to the criminal trespass, the officer obviously discussed some broken glass. I believe a metal shelf is what he testified to being present at the apartment. However, I believe, given the testimony that we have from the officer, he's unable to determine yes, the manner in which that shelf was broken. Could be multiple ways in which my client may very well have broken that shelf, but we cannot be sure how that was done. It leaves open the very viable possibility that it occurred by accident, simply from the fact that he was intoxicated, according to his mother. Given the testimony, the evidence that the court has before it, there's really not any sort of detail that's been provided that could allow the court to make that determination. Simply the fact that there is something broken doesn't carry along with it any sort of presumption that it was done with ill intent. Submit that there is a very real possibility of an accident here in this situation. Additionally, Your Honor, with regard to the disorderly conduct, we heard testimony from the officer about cussing and carrying on. I think that was made pretty clear, and I suspect that there were other officers that heard the cussing and carrying on. However, I would submit that that is not enough to meet the requirements of the statute. Disorderly conduct, while classically everybody thinks of disorderly conduct as somebody cussing and carrying on. However, I believe the section of the statute that we are dealing with would be talking about using words or language to incite an immediate breach of the peace. There's been no discussion of damaging property or placing anybody in danger, using opprobrious or abusive language here intended to incite immediate breach of the peace. I don't believe that there's any evidence that that occurred. And I don't believe that anybody present could have heard any sort of fighting words, anything that would tend to cause a breach of peace on the part of the person who heard that. And so there certainly is some language and some behavior. However, the things that we would need to make it a disorderly conduct are simply not here. Where is the fear of safety, the fear of health from the people that heard this loud and inappropriate language? And where is if you're going to use the other section of the statute, where's the fighting words? Where's the true threat? I believe case law describes a true threat for that prong of the statute in Freeman v. State, case from Supreme Court 2017, 302 Georgia 181. And so I submit to the court that if possibly other evidence had been submitted, maybe there was something here for some sort of ordinance violation, something like that, but simply the evidence that's presented, there's certainly no disorderly conduct. And with the evidence presented, we can't make the assumption that my client damaged that property with the intent to do so. And so for those reasons, I would ask the court find that there is no probable cause and dismiss the warrants. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, Your Honor. Officer Owens did state in regard to the criminal trespass that when he spoke to the defendant's mother, she stated that he had acted in that manner because he was upset with her due to her not helping him out. He stated that he that he had knocked over the shelves in the living room and had broke the glass on the shelves. And as to the disorderly conduct, the officer did testify that it was his behavior in the breezeway was sufficient for a person, for the neighbor to come outside and, you know, trying to see what the commotion was. And also, his other behavior as well could have been an indicator for that disorderly conduct. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I'll address the criminal trespass first. I'm gonna find that there's not sufficient evidence to bind over the count of the criminal trespass. There was testimony given of a glass shelf that was knocked over, and that glass broke, but there's no testimony as to the ownership of that shelf. And so that could have been Mr. Scott's shelf. The original testimony was that there were some items that were broken. And I think Officer Owens came back later on cross-examination and indicated that it was a shelf that had glass on it, and the glass was turned over, or the glass was broken, and his mother was cleaning up the glass. So I didn't hear the last remaining element that there was some type of ownership interest in that shelf by the alleged victim, so that he could be charged with damaging her property or damaging jointly held property. It was a shelf in the house that was turned over and broken, but there's no testimony as to the ownership. So that charge is going to be dismissed. The disorderly conduct charge, I believe that there is sufficient evidence for this charge to be bound over. And looking at 161139A3, where it says without provocation uses to or of another person and such other person's presence opprobrious or abusive words. And I heard testimony from Officer Evans that I believe to be sufficient to get over the hurdle as it relates to the disorderly conduct charge of what he observed when he placed Mr. Scott in his patrol car. So warrant number 2022 WA02115 is going to be dismissed, but warrant number 2022 WA02116 is going to get bound over to state court. Do we have anything? Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I was just going to, do you need me to provide orders to the court to that effect? Or how
Yes,
did you-
please. Yes, please.
Okay, I will.
Okay. So the next case I have is Mr. Weaver. And do you have your witness here on that case, Ms. Hernandez?
Yes,
Okay.
Miss Officer Singh.
Okay. Officer Owens, you can be excused or you can stay, whatever is your pleasure.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So we're gonna call, let's bring up Mr. Darius Ramon Weaver. And Mr. Moore, you indicated we're going forward with the hearing for Miss Willa, correct? Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we have Officer Singh and we have Mr. Weaver. Okay, I'm calling case number, State of Georgia versus Darius Ramon Weaver. He's charged in warrant number 2022 WA 02230 with committing the offense of criminal trespass. Ms. Hernandez, would you swear in your witness and begin your direct examination?
Yes. Officer Singh, if you can please raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear that the testimony that you shall give on this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your name for the court.
Officer Singh.
Okay. And how are you employed?
I'm employed as a police officer with Jonesboro Police Department.
And how long have you been with the Jonesboro Police Department?
About over 7 months.
And are you post-certified?
Yes.
And does that give you arrest powers?
Yes.
Were you on duty on January 26, 2022?
Yes.
And do you recall responding to a location of 8805 Terra Boulevard in Jonesboro?
Yes.
Is that here in Clayton County?
Yes.
And can you please tell me why you were dispatched to that location?
So I was at the QT in the restroom, and I saw the stall that was next to me while I was in the restroom without being called there. And the door that was next to me, it's only two things that you can use in the restroom. One's the stand up and one's the actual stall. The stall had a sign that says "Do not enter." And when I was in the restroom, I thought I heard somebody inside that stall that said "Do not move" or "Do not enter." But I had left that stall, and as I was walking out, the clerk came to me and says, "Is he still in there?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" She told me that she called the police, and I still haven't had been dispatched at that time. So she told me that there was somebody sleeping in the stall since 11 o'clock. So I went back in the stall and I knocked on the stall, and there was Mr. Weaver. He came out and he was in there. So I got him to come outside, name and date of birth. And once it was entered into our database, it showed me that he was already trespassed from that location, and that it was going to be ending soon. And so because he already had been trespassed, I placed him into handcuffs and arrested him for the trespass.
And what time was it when all this occurred?
It was around 2:30ish, something in the morning.
And are you able to see the person whom you arrested here on Zoom?
Yes, in the orange jumpsuit.
And why was the defendant placed under arrest?
Because he had already been trespassed and he can't return back on property where he was trespassed from.
No further questions from the state, Your Honor.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Officer Singh.
Morning.
So, you actually weren't dispatched on this. You just kind of came upon the situation, right?
Yeah, and then when I was there talking to him, that was when I got dispatched as well, and I just told him that I'm already here.
Gotcha. All right. So you, the clerk kind of didn't direct you to go into the restroom. You spoke with the clerk after you left the restroom, right?
No, she flagged me down as I was leaving the restroom.
Sorry. Yes, you answered my question. That's what I meant to say. And so she had asked you, her words to you were simply that she was wondering if he was still in there, right?
Yeah.
So she had never given you any indication that she had told him to leave, correct?
No. Or at least I don't remember as of right now. I don't think she did.
So as far as the reason why we had an arrest or a criminal trespass situation, from your understanding, is because you had some information that there had previously been a trespass issued to
Yes.
him. Is that right? You don't know who the person was who issued that trespass, correct?
No, but it was in our system. When you type in his name and date of birth, it comes up with his picture, and it has the person's history on everything, on if there's been any interaction that was on paper. And that's the system that matched his picture and had that address of the QT with the expiration date of the next month. And he only had like a couple of days too. But that's
So
not knowledge.
criminal trespasses have an expiration date?
For that one, it did. It had an expiration date, and it was for February 1st.
Gotcha.
Or no, that was the day it was issued. I'm sorry, and it expired on February 1st of 2023. Actually, you had it one whole year. Sorry.
No worries. But regardless, that's all the information you had about that trespass, right?
Yeah.
We don't know who actually told him anything about a trespass, correct?
Told who?
The defendant, Mr. Weaver.
Oh, I'm sorry. Say that one more time. I didn't.
We don't know who made, so in the previous incident, right? Whatever that was, in some form or fashion, supposedly he was trespassed, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know who did that trespassing, so to speak, right?
Okay, no, not that I'm aware of.
We also are unaware of what was communicated to Mr. Weaver, correct?
You can say that. Because I wasn't here when that would have happened. I wasn't employed here.
Right, gotcha. No further questions. Thank you.
Any reader, right, Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, just one question. Officer Singh, in which stall was the defendant located?
So that QT only has two stalls. It has one standing stall, has one actual sitting down stall, and he was inside the sitting down stall that also had a sign outside that says "Do not enter" because it was out of order. And the female also stated, the clerk stated that she put something over the toilet seat too from people getting in there, but he was still in there. She said, or he was, because I saw him.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, no further questions.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Is this your only witness, Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Officer Singh, you may be excused if you so desire. Any argument on this case?
From defense, Your Honor.
The state would hold until closing reserve.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I generally think there's two types of criminal trespass like this. One where, a person is told to leave after encountering somebody, and then there's the criminal trespass in which somebody has previously been told or given a criminal trespass notice, warning, and then they return to the property. I would submit, given the officer's testimony, that this certainly isn't the first type, and that there's been no evidence presented, and I believe the officer was under the understanding that the clerk did not ask my client to leave at the time of this incident. Therefore, moving on to the second type of criminal trespass, in which he may have been given a previous warning not to come back. Say that there's simply no evidence of how that occurred. Notice is an essential element of criminal trespass. You have to be told in a way that is clear and understandable to you as the person, the theoretical trespasser, that you can't come back. We have no evidence of who did that or what was communicated. Theoretically, I believe there was a date that was given. However, we have no understanding of the nature of that, or whether that was made by somebody that had the authority to actually trespass him, because that's also an important, an essential element of providing that notice. There's a whole host of cases on this issue. Submit Rayburn v. State, 250 Georgia 657, a case from 1983. There's a host of cases addressing this, and I would submit simply that what you've heard is not sufficient for those purposes. My client may have been trespassed previously. He may not have been. We don't know who did it. We don't know what he understood about the trespass or the circumstances under which he was trespassed previously. And so for all those reasons, Your Honor, I'd ask that you find that there is not probable cause for the arrest here and dismiss the warrant. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, Your Honor. Officer Singh did testify that the defendant was located in in a place he shouldn't have been, given the signs that were on the stall. Furthermore, he had been there, I think he said he had been there since 11, and the officer was there around 2 a.m. So he had just been sitting there for a while in the restroom. And like the officer stated, there was a criminal trespass that was set to expire next year at that time. So there was something in place. There was notice at that time. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay. I'm going to find that the evidence is sufficient to bind this over to the state court of Clayton County. I was looking at OCGA 16-7-21B2, where it says a person commits the offense of criminal trespass when he or she knowingly and without authority enters upon the land or premises of another. After prior to such entry receiving notice from the owner, rightful occupant, or upon proper identification and authorized representative of the owner or rightful occupant that such entry is forbidden. The testimony that I heard from Officer Singh, I think, was sufficient to establish that someone at some point went through the effort to place Mr. Weaver within the system with the notice that he had been given a criminal trespass warning at this location. I don't believe that Officer Singh would have had that information if it did not come from an authorized representative. So I'm gonna bound this over. And Mr. Moore, your arguments may be well placed where there is a standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. But right here, we have a probable cause standard, which is much lower.
Surely, Your Honor. Thank you.
You're welcome. So do I need to skip to Mr. Williams, or can we do Miss Willa next?
Your Honor, so for Miss Willa, the officer not available at this time. The state would ask for a continuance. We have been trying to reach the officer, but we have been unsuccessful.
Okay, I'm gonna take that under advisement, and we're gonna move over to Mr. Williams, and then we'll deal with this issue at the end. So I need Mr. Kendrick A. Williams to be brought up.
Judge, it's like Williams, Kendrick.
Yes, sir.
I don't have William Kendrick on the calendar, on my calendar.
He's position 9 on my calendar, Kendrick A. Williams.
Just give me 1 minute, let me check.
Okay.
Judge, he bonded out.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say, I think he may have just bonded out past.
Yeah,
the bullet.
He bonded out, Deputy Usher. You can stop looking.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Mary.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that brings us back to Angela Willa.
All right, let me bring Miss Wheeler.
Your Honor, may I excuse Officer Chase? He was on the Williams matter.
Yes, yes, Officer Chase, thank you for appearing. You may be excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
What's your name?
Davenport. Davenport.
What's your name?
Davenport.
Come on, you know.
Davenport.
Come on, it's not you. Come on.
Oh, okay.
It's under the
I've
star
been
rider.
one time. Welcome.
Was that Mrs. Davenport?
Yes, Judge.
Okay.
You need me?
No.
Okay.
Who's Weaver? Weaver? Angela. Who's Angela? Weaver. What's your name? Angela?
Thought I was hearing Weaver.
I thought I read that too, Judge.
Right, what's going on? Come on, right here.
Where?
Right here. Come on.
Right here?
Yes, ma'am. Turn around.
Right here? Right here, sir?
Ma'am, hi, my name
Good
is Brad Gardner. I'm a magistrate judge here presiding over a preliminary hearing. Can you tell me your name, please?
Angela Willa?
Okay. So Ms. Hernandez, you're asking for a continuance.
Yes, Your Honor. We just don't have the officers, and we've been trying to get in contact with them, and we've been unsuccessful. That's all I can say.
Okay. Mr. Moore?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I certainly appreciate the state's situation and trying to get together some Atlanta police officers when, obviously we're Clayton County. However, my client has been in custody since January 24th, awaiting this hearing. I would submit that that's a very extended period of time to be in custody for disorderly conduct of this nature. I would request to move forward, and if the state's unable to proceed, I would request that the warrant be dismissed.
Ms. Hernandez, are you able to proceed today?
No,
Okay.
Your Honor.
Okay. I'm going to grant the motion to dismiss for warrant of prosecution. So, Mr. Moore, I would need you to just send me over an order dismissing this charge.
Yes, sir, I will. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, come on this way, man. Stand over there.
Does that mean I get you home?
Come on. Yeah, you're gonna go. Stand right here.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, ma'am. So it appears we have reached the end of the calendar. Are there any matters that needed to be addressed that I did not address? Ms. Gross, I think I saw your email come across.
I did send it, Your Honor, and Ms. Hernandez has already signed the consent line on the modification of the bond.
Okay, so Mr. Moore, I think I have two orders coming from you. The dismissal for Ms. Willa
Yes, sir.
and
So a bind over for Mr. Weaver, a bind over for Mr. Scott.
on the
And,
disorderly conduct only, yes.
and also an appointment on Ms. Willa. And Mr. Williams is out, Mr. McLean is out, and I think that's it, right?
Yes, sir, I agree. Do you concur, Ms. Hernandez?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay, well, thank you all for your attention to these matters. And court's going to be adjourned.